Hi guys, Randall here, and today we are going to talk about yet another Cost 100 Dark unit. So we are getting the third copy of Little Leela. As far as I know, she's the only unit so far to have 3 versions in the game, so if you're a fan of Little Leela, well, good for you. What she is a bruisery character with really good damage, and she sets up her teammates with future hits. So she really is a good unit for the Dark element. I believe out of the other units that has been released for Dark since her release in JP, she is the best one to get. So if you do want to play Dark a lot, she's definitely one you should look out for. But I don't think she's a must pull for every player, mostly because she's not time limited. So if you're not getting her now, you will be getting some other occasions to get her at some point. And from what I've been told from the JP side, there has been a unit of choice select ticket that you could get using Fate Viz, using real money, that had her on there. So there are other ways to get her in the future. So today we'll take a look at how to build her and which teams, which runes you should use, and just generally what she has in her kit, and then whether she's worth Viz and for you or not. So let's begin. One of the main selling points of Little Leela, especially in JP, was that she's very accurate. So with her alongside Joker and Prompto, for example, you can have a highly accurate Dark team that can take out just about any light spot because they never miss. So that's really, really good. She does have Courage, but also an ability that heals her back when she goes to low HP. So it's kind of hard to take her down, plus some other means of damage mitigation. So she's a little bit like Joker in that she plays in a setup where she doesn't die in a single hit, but deals massive damage to enemies whenever she gets to hit. So overall, that's really good. She has a basic movement of 3, but a jump of 2, so that's usually good. I like units being able to go over obstacles, so that's a good thing. She uses daggers, and then as armor, she uses hat, cloth, and accessories. So no armor, no helm, which means no Kane's TMR or Rob's TMR, so that's a little bit of a detriment for her. Her TMR is interesting, but I don't think it's going to see too much play. In terms of stats, it's good. It has some HP, defense, accuracy, and crit evasion. These are all fairly valuable stats. And the ability gives an agility buff in an AoE, which is really interesting, right? It makes everybody in your team go faster. It's kind of a mini haste in an AoE. So I would value this highly, except, you know, in a PvP team, there are so many good TMRs that you never have enough for 3. So this is a great TMR for PvE, perhaps, where you have 5 different TMRs you can use and you're good, but otherwise there are too many other good TMRs to run to ever use this in PvP, so I don't value this as a reason to pull the unit. Now, in terms of stats, it was kind of hard to find out who to compare her to, but I decided on Dwayne and Esther because they are pure bruisers with really good stat lines, and I wanted to see how Little Leela would compare to those. So first things, she has less HP than these guys. She does have a couple other ways to mitigate damage, but she won't stay on the field as long as Esther. I would say her general ability to stay on the field is similar to Dwayne's because she has Courage and heals back, whereas Dwayne just has a bulkier stat line but dies when his health reaches 0. So that's interesting. Little Leela's attack is through the roof. It's really, really high. Barely any other unit is going to be able to match that, so that's a good selling point for her. And then she is really fast at 68 agility. It's the same agility that Esther has, and she is one of the fastest units out there. So that's definitely really good for her. She does have really high base luck as well. Like 269 is really high, so if you're using Maidens of the Rose and etc., it is very easy to make her accurate. Don't think she's an evasion unit though. You won't get there very easily. She doesn't have passives for that. Although her limit break does blind, she's not really designed to be an evasion type character. She's got really good resistances in terms of bulk, with positive resistances to slash, strike, and missile, and then magic as well, so really good across the board. She is weak to pierce. It's not the most common of damage types, but against some enemies you will have to be more careful. And then there are no real good status effect resistances, no stop, no charm, no disable, so you do have to be wary of that if you fight enemies with status effects, but it's not the end of the world either. Overall though, main selling points, very fast, hits very hard, has decent HP even though it's not tank level, it is quite good. It's easy to get her to 8.5 or 9,000 HP in a team if you build accordingly. Now, let's look at her kit, and first of all, the passives. She's got quite a few good choices. I think you always want the one on top that gives you accuracy and defense penetration. These are both very important stats if you want her to deal damage. And if you're running Little Leela, yes, she's bruisery, but you want her to hit hard. It's really what she brings to a team. And then you have a couple different choices depending on what you want to do. If you're building for resistances, I think her other main job passive that gives her slash and missile resistance can be really good, but if you don't know what you're going against and you're in a blind game mode, I would instead use the Pugilist ability that gives you HP and attack up, because these are going to help you survive against anything, whereas only slash and missile resistance might be better if you're fighting these kind of enemies, but it can be penetrated, which HP cannot, and you can end up fighting enemies that don't have these damage types, and then it's less useful. So depending on what you pick, that's probably what I would focus on. Paladin's Blessing could also be pretty good because it has defense and HP, but I find that modern attackers nowadays have so much defense penetration that it doesn't matter as much when you're going to be fighting enemies with 80, 100 defense penetration. Your 12 extra defense just won't matter as much now. In terms of counters, I believe you should go for Paladin's Guard because it has a chance to mitigate damage, and the thing is, all her counters that are attacking enemies are very short range, and enemies in War of the Visions don't attack you in melee range. Even guys with swords and spears actually hit you from really far away because all their abilities do that. So your chances to actually proc a melee range counter is really low. You go for the damage mitigation and you always have a chance to at least benefit from the counter abilities you've set. Now let's look at the big portion, her main job. Her basic ability has a chance to paralyze, no big deal in my mind because you will not want to run her at a high faith, you just don't want her to take extra magic damage. Then her next buff gives you a 50% chance to ignore reactions from enemies. Really good if you want to mitigate reflex or etc. But I'm not very sold on this because if I have the chance to use one of the many abilities in the game that just make me outright ignore counters, I will use that. A 50% chance is good, but there is still a risk of getting reflex, of losing a match because you were unlucky, and so it's not reliable enough for me to care very much. However, it also increases slash attack penetration by 40 for allies in an area, which is really interesting because with this and some other partners, you can basically ignore slash resistance. And then there's going to be the Anima Vision card that gives you some extra slash resistance penetration, so you could build to basically ignore that stat, which is really good. And then on top of that, it makes her heal when she goes below 20% HP, which is really good paired with her courage that she has elsewhere in her kit, and it restores her AP by quite a lot. It's a really good buff, it's definitely one that you need to leave on for her. Then she's got an attack that is a cross shape with extra hit chance that decreases defense before damage. It's not a 200 mod, but because it decreases defense before it deals damage, you can expect this to hit very hard, and it's going to be high in her AI priority because it will actually hit really hard. She will use the next ability down the line if she can catch 3 people or more in a diamond shape, because that will overall do more damage. And this one's also a really good ability. It will dispel after damage, which means if the damage misses, it doesn't dispel. But if it does land a hit, you will remove haste and other buffs, which is usually really good. Then she's got her own version of courage. Ideally, Leela really works well in a map where she has 2 turns to buff. That's something that's very important for her. Because of that, you might want to run her with a bow tie or something like that, where she will not get to the enemy too quickly and has time to use both. The reason being, if she doesn't have courage, then she might just outright die and not heal back, so not benefit fully from her previous buff. So that's something to keep in mind. She really needs those 2 buffs to be online to be able to do her job well. And then if courage wasn't enough, as long as it hasn't been popped, she will have 20 more AoE resistance. And now Dark Element has recently received a vision card that gives you 20 AoE resistance, so with the 2 of those, you are at a 40% AoE res, which is really good because if units clump together, well, you're not getting screwed too much. So that's a good thing to have on top. It's one of the stats that I value the most because there is no penetration for AoE resistance. There are just abilities that decrease it by flat amounts. So it's overall one of the best ways to stay alive in the game. Then her final ability dispels Protect, which can be good, I guess, in some fights, and then decreases healing power as well. And that part I like quite a bit because I'm getting tired of having Veluses and Resnick eventually just counter my teams by healing back to full every turn. So I feel like having healing power down is an important thing nowadays, just because it shuts down healers very much. And then most healing power down abilities that I've seen are at 50. This one is a 70 down, which is really high. It will completely negate healing from the target you're hitting. Then Little Leela's Limit Break is also interesting. It will increase her defense penetration, but just for that cast, so it's not like it's very important. She already has 40% with her passive, and then if you have a room for that, you can be at 50%, so I don't care about that too much. But outside of that, it's a 200 mod attack that will then have a chance to blind, and if the target gets blinded, it will have decreased slash resistance for a couple turns. So it's an interesting combination. She is a good-ish support for evasion units because of that blind, and then just decreasing slash resistance enables your other guys. She decreases defense, removes protect, removes buffs, and decreases slash resistance altogether. Because of all that combination, she is a good enabler. She's going to hit hard, not die too quickly, and then stack debuffs on the enemy team one after the other. I think her Brilliant Dagger, or whatever the global name is for that job, sub, is not the one you're going to want to run too often. It does give you two options, one of them decreasing slash resistance, but she already has that in her limit break, and then the other ability with a Chains of Confusion I don't find very reliable, because again, you will be wanting to run her at a low fade. Instead, I would be interested in running her as a paladin, probably. And the reason for that is she is pretty bulky. She will be harder to kill than the other members of your team. So if you give her access to abilities like Saintly Wall, Sentinel, and then Tommy Blade, you can attract hate on her, make her tank even longer, and then your other guys keep hitting. So if she's paired with a super heady hitter like Joker or Black Rose Helena, that's definitely a boon for your team, and I feel like this sub-job will have a lot of value. Otherwise, you could also go for Pugilist, and the main asset here is if you're fighting an enemy team that has a lot of slash resistance, and for some reason you get your own slash resistance penetration buff dispelled, or you run out of turns, well then you have some other types of damage you can leverage, and a lot of the units that have been released recently on the JP side have some strike weakness. It's kind of a trend. Very few units are resistant to strike attacks, so you can leverage that quite a bit. It also gives her access to a heal, which I guess could be good in some scenarios, but overall it's just the extra damage type you're getting from Pugilist if you're running this. So now we've seen her kit, what would this look like in a build? And she is actually very, very strong. Now, as per usual, you see the vision cards I put on partners in here. They are also dark partners, so we have 3 units with the dark mastery abilities right here. But with all that, she's at 8,000 HP, which isn't bad, 27 defense, but very low spirit, and then okay resistances, 50% to slash is really, really good, and then 29 to missile, 25 to magic, a little bit of strike resistance as well, still some weakness to pierce. So you can expect her to take quite a few hits before going down. Remember, if her courage is on, she's got 20 AoE resistance, and I also have the AoE resistance vision card for a total of 40 AoE resistant here, which I think is really good overall. And then 1400 attack is high. It's not as high as some other units that we see reach 1600s, but it is going to be enough to do serious damage, especially because she enables, right? She decreases defense and spells protect and has some other things that further increases damage. She does have crazy luck at 476. She doesn't really need an Alex ring to be able to reliably hit enemies, which is good, unless you're fighting a light team with maxed out evasion, in which case you might want to get that little bit of extra accuracy if you want. And then she's got really high, 88 dark attack, 45 slash. It's going to hit really hard overall. And let's talk about 104 agility. It's not the highest. I've seen units go to, 111, 115 if they really, really build for agility. But overall, it's enough to not get lapped too often by enemies, which is enough for me. And then if you're wondering what vision card I'm putting on, that is the Anima vision card. It's going to be coming the week afterwards. Most likely, but it is a cost 90 vision card just like Bahamut or Chaos Odin, and I don't think you should necessarily chase for it. There are a bunch of good dark vision cards. Yes, it is a bit better than a lot of the alternatives, but there are other things you could slot in there that would be good otherwise. I would probably just put Maidens of the Rose in primary and then something else in secondary instead. Now, for this build, I was using a specific rune set that you have on screen right here. I think depending on what you fight, you will either want to run a luck set or a spirit or defense set. And spirit and defense set have that interesting thing where they bring healing power up as the set bonus, and that's definitely good. In this specific case, I would probably round out her defense and spirit with a spirit set and just have good numbers in both. But if you're expecting to potentially fight evasion, or if you're going in blind, you definitely want to just get the luck set and reduce your chances of missing. That's very important. So in terms of passives, on the defensive side, you do want luck and HP. I think these are non-negotiable. And then depending on what you're expecting to fight, I would probably go with slash and missile resistance just because they're usually very good. And then I like preventing charm and stop because these are very annoying status effects, but you go for whatever you like. On the offensive side, again, if you're not sure what you're going to be fighting and you expect evasion might be in there, accuracy set, you kind of have to. But otherwise, I like the idea of an attack set on her because she's got good damage, but it's not top tier damage. So pushing that a little bit further is going to help her out quite a bit. So you could go for that. And then passives, you do want the healing power passive for sure. Dark attack will generally increase your damage, so it's good. And then attack 20%, acquired AP 20%. And then you can decide. I went for slash resistance penetration and defense penetration, but you could, if you really hate reflex, go for reaction rate down. There's a lot of good options in there. So with all that said, let's put her in a sample team. I think there's a lot of stuff you can do for her. She's in a spot where if you would normally use Dwayne, you could replace Dwayne with Little Leela. The thing she doesn't have over Dwayne is innate hate, so she won't mess with the enemy's movement early on. You might have to put a bow tie on her to get something similar, and then she also has less movement than what Dwayne brings, but in exchange for that she has better damage and then larger AoEs, which is generally a good thing. I would see a combo like Little Leela, Joker, and Black Rose Helena be very, very deadly, especially because Joker and Little Leela are going to be in front of the Black Rose, hopefully, and then they won't go down in a single hit. Meanwhile, Black Rose impulse Dark Element, and then you kill enemies with whatever follow-up Little Leela or Joker brings, and their large AoEs as well. You could also have a team where Little Leela is in front of your other two guys, and you have Joker and Prompto laid behind a little bit. The fact that Joker is going to give extra tankiness to Little Leela as well with his buffs makes it a really good combo. I've seen them together on JP videos quite a bit, and it seems to be a monstrous team. And then there are a lot of other good dark units. You could go for Minera, you could go for Dark Fina, you could go for Galvez. I have seen some gameplay with Little Leela, Dark Fina, and Black Rose Helena that was really, really good because Dark Fina is also really hard to remove. She's going to come back, and then you have a team that's just hard to kill, but continuously deals massive damage. One of the advantages of running Little Leela with a team of mages is you can run bells on her, and then you don't need any tool of AP generation on your other team members, so you're not running out of steam too early in a fight. So that could be a boon. Overall though, I've said a lot of good about her, and I do think she is a really good unit. But I don't think she's a must-pull for most players. I think we just went through a crunch where people had to pull for basically everything because it was time limited and it was really hard to try to get everything and stay up to date. She is not time limited. You will eventually have a chance to pull her. I know that she was on some selection tickets on the JP side, which is, you know, gives you some other options if you're a spender. So I think if you're a dark player, then sure, if you want to main dark and you want to make this a very strong element for you in the future, she is more important, in my opinion, to pull for than Dark Fina. So definitely a unit you'd have to look out for. If you need an immediate power boost, you're struggling to compete in guild battle or arena or clearing PvE content, and you want that immediate power to try to get that content done, then sure, it's a good timing, go for her. But otherwise, you know, if you're not a major dark player and you don't have that immediate need for a power boost, you might want to skip. There's a lot of other good stuff, and gacha games are designed so that every next thing that comes out is even more tempting than the last. So if you manage to hold off on pulling something, well, you might end up with something you like more in the future. That's pretty much how it's designed. And then if you don't have enough to pity, she is half rate, she is a cost 100 unit. Do not pull, do not spend Viz unless you're sure of getting her, because you might end up just wasting some precious Viz, and that's the worst case scenario. I'm personally going to be skipping. Now, if there is a 9-step, I will do step 1 and 2 because I need diamonds. I only have 2 left, and then step 1 has a diamond. Might as well do the 2 because it gives me like 2 more 10 shots, but that's it. I'm not going any further. I need to build some Viz back. I don't even have 40k to pity her right now, so I'm going to be holding off and be patient here, and hopefully I'll get my chance to get her down the line. But otherwise, dark is not the element I focus on too much, so it's not like it's that big of a loss for me. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Do you guys feel like she's an unskippable unit and everybody should get her? Do you feel like I'm on point here? I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts. So thank you so much for watching. I will be back soon, and take care.